I'm going to explain how to apply and adjust transitions in this lesson. So to follow along, go to Working Files, After Effects Projects, and open up 1304 Transitions. This comp has two video clips in it. We're going to transition from this one, the watermelon harvest clip, down to the vineyard clip. There's the vineyard shot right there. And then down below here inside the timeline, I've got this plaster texture. Looks like that because some of these transitions call for the use of a gradient or a texture. So we'll use that one when it's called for. Let's take a look at the transitions over here in the Effects and Presets panel. There they are, arranged alphabetically. There aren't that many, just a few, fewer than you'd find in a typical nonlinear video editor. But you have a little bit more control over transitions here. And just keep in mind that there are many, many more transitions available for After Effects. If you search for them online, you can find some for free and some that you need to buy. But these are the ones that come with the retail version of After Effects. So let's go over to this clip. The way that transitions work is that you typically apply them to a clip above another clip. It's not always the way, but that's kind of the normal way. You're transitioning from a clip to another clip. So you apply the transition to the clip you're transitioning from. I'm going to go to the Effect Controls panel. I've applied all of those transitions to this one clip here, the Watermelon Harvest clip. And we're going to take a look at all of them. I'll just try to kind of zip through all of them so you get a sense of how they work. Let's open up Block Dissolve first. There we go. It says Transition Completion. This is true for virtually all transitions. There's this thing that just says basically start and end. If I start dragging on this, you'll see how it just transitions from one to the other, and you can sort of preview it simply by just dragging through transition completion. And there are various options here in terms of the size of the block. So if I go, let's say, in a little ways, you can get a sense for how that works, and you can feather them as well. Turn off soft edges, make it sharper, however you want to do it. All right, turn that one off. Going down to Card Wipe. Take a look at that. You can see all those cards flip over, revealing the layer below it. Or in this case, they're revealing the same layer because the default setting is to reveal what's below it and then come back to the layer above it. So you need to say, no, the back layer is going to be vineyard. That's really where I want to go. And then you will go to the vineyard, meaning the back layer of the flipped cards. And there are many options here in terms of size of the cards and how they're arranged, things like that. Going down to Gradient Wipe. Gradient Wipe needs to have a gradient. You need to tell it where the gradient is. So I need to tell it the gradient is that thing on layer 3. There it is. And now I need to go through the transition, and you'll see how the gradient then begins to show up, how that plaster shot tends to drive the transition. The Iris Wipe is a transition that I think should probably have been dropped. It just doesn't work all that well. It doesn't even have a transition completion option, so we're going to take a pass on that one. Linear Wipe is pretty simple. You can see it's just basically it goes across the page like that, and you can feather it or not. I'll reset it so you can see what it looks like without the feather. There you go. If you do feather it, it's just a good way to transition. If you want to, let's say, put a graphic here or something to follow along, you can just put that on a different layer and just have it move along with the transition. You'll see that a lot when people use linear wipes. Radial Wipe works like a clock, just kind of rotate it around. What's kind of cool about this is that you can decide where you want to put it. So you click on this little target there, and that puts this little target on the screen. So let's say you can put it right on this guy's hat. And then you could have the radial wipe go around like that. And let's go down to Venetian blinds. This is what you would think it would be if you think of Venetian blinds. It's kind of thin, right? So you can make the blinds thicker like so, and you can feather them, soften it up a bit. Now we're down to the Psychor effects, and these guys, as you'd expect, are just totally great. Click on CC Glass Wipe. It needs a gradient layer, so I tell it that the gradient layer is that plaster texture. You can use anything as a gradient layer. It doesn't have to be a still image. It can be a video clip as well, which actually is kind of fun. If you start going through here, you begin to see how this works. This is a very processor-intensive effect, so I'll go partially in here, and you begin to see it kind of breaking up there a little. There you go. That's how it uses the gradient to kind of get through that transition, trying to look like sort of bent glass. CC Grid Wipe looks like that, and you can adjust the size of the squares, the spacing between the squares, other things like that. The CC Image Wipe sounds like you're actually taking an image from someplace, but you're not. It's just kind of what they call it. You need to tell it what layer you're going to use for the gradient again. So if I go down here to choose the gradient, we'll have the plaster texture be the gradient. And it's going to look for all the world like the gradient transition, but it has more controls. So if you really want a gradient transition, use the Image Wipe. Jaws is something that is used every year, right around Halloween time. Who'd have thought, right? You can adjust the direction of it as well, rotate it around, have it fit whatever it is you're trying to use the jaws on. You can change the size of the jaws, what have you. CC Light Wipe, I love this one. Watch this. It just makes this bright kind of glow. And what's really great is to choose the color from source, because that looks for bright areas in the source and just radiates away from bright stuff and really animates it. You don't have to have it be round like that. You can have it be doors, as they call it, or square, whatever you like. And you can decide what the direction is going to be. Really cool. Line sweep just kind of drops things down with little cards like that. Radial scale wipe. You'll see how this one works. Kind of looks like it's kind of pushing things back. Again, you can decide what the center is going to be by clicking on the target. So let's say we're put over here in this watermelon right there, and you can come out of the watermelon. Or what you can do is you can reverse it so that you can basically dive down to something and reveal the layer behind it. Very nice. Scale wipe. This is a thing that kind of stretches things away. What you do here is you determine how much you want to stretch something, how stretchy it's going to be. And then what you animate is the center. So you click on the center, and as you move the center around, that determines the beginning and the end of the transition. So the stretch, you just say how much you want to stretch something, and then you can animate this thing. And you can animate, obviously, the angle, things like that. And you can have this applied to multiple layers that are blended together in some way and have them all work together if you want to. Very cool how that works. And you can also animate this whole center thing wherever you want. All right. Warp-O-Matic. I can just see some guy doing a late night commercial about the Warp-O-Matic. I'll show you this one works. I've got it set up already because it's really processor intensive, so you get a chance to get a look at kind of the results there. You're revealing the layer vineyard in this case. You need to say what you're revealing. And the completion talks about how much you're warping to the next layer, kind of like semi-Van Gogh-ish there. You can adjust other things as well. I've got this last one out of alphabetical order, Twister, because it requires some special mention. I'll turn it on. Let's take a look at it. What you can do with Twister is that you say there's something on the back side of what you're twisting from. So typically you want the next thing you're twisting to be on the back side. So I've chosen the vineyard to be on the back side. Now let's watch what happens here. We twist from one, but what happens is it not only is it on the back side, but it reveals the next layer in the process, which, 99% of the time you don't want to do. So, what's the story here? Well, there's another use for this thing. You can click on none instead, like that. And then you basically have nothing there, and it just disappears, which is kind of cool, but that's not really the full value because you want to see something on the back side of it. So I'm going to go back to this guy and show you the workaround for this to make it so you don't see what's below it. So I'm going to put keyframes in here so we can see where the keyframes are for the completion. So I'll turn on keyframes for completion at 0, so nothing's happened yet. Go forward a little bit and have keyframe for 100%, and those keyframes will be added automatically down here. I'll click on this layer and press U to reveal keyframes. There they are, those two guys. What I need to do now is just trim the clip that it's going to such that the trim ends right there, and so the clip starts on that keyframe. So I navigate to that keyframe by clicking on this little navigation guy, and then I trim the vineyard clip down here to that keyframe. Hold down the Shift key so it snaps to it. And now it'll reveal what's below it here in the timeline. If I turn off the eyeball for plaster texture, and it reveals the transparency here, which when you render this, it'll be black. So that may be what you want. You can reveal whatever's below it in the timeline. If you turn this on, you'll see that being revealed as you go from one to the next. So you might want a logo back there or something, or just a little bit of artwork back there, or a gradient or something. But whatever's below it in the timeline will be revealed. The trouble is you may not want to have things below it revealed in the timeline. So I need to show you the other workaround, and this one is not all that well known out there, so let me show you that works. I'm going to show you the other workaround that just combines the two layers and does not reveal what's below it in the timeline. It shows transparency, which is maybe what you want. To do that, you add an adjustment layer. Right-click, New Adjustment Layer. It goes on top automatically, which is where you want it. Apply the twister to it. So you see twister to the adjustment layer. There you go. You click on it. What I want to do now is tell it, okay, I want the back side of this guy to be the vineyard. And now let's watch what happens. I'm going to go through the completion here. And there you go. It reveals the backside, and it only affects those two layers and does not show anything below it during that time that it's playing. So just be aware that you can use the adjustment layer to do this. Let's go a little bit farther forward here to where it's past that guy. If I turn off this layer right now, you still see it as if you didn't turn it off. It's one of the downsides to using it. So you need to limit the adjustment layer to just the duration of that transition. Otherwise, you'll continue to see the layer that you wanted to go to, even if you don't want to see it anymore. So now we can see the layer below it. So it's the one little downside to using the adjustment layer. But what it does is it lets you see only those two layers as you go through the transition. That's what's cool about it. You just see only transparency behind it if that's what you want. Even if you have 50 items stacked down below here, you won't see them. It just shows transition. So you can either use an adjustment layer to have transparency or trim this guy to the end point of the transition completion. And that way you'll see what's below it here inside the timeline. So that, folks, is how you use transitions here inside After Effects.